All right, so let's look at a couple of different ways to do this. I'm going to use a structural beam for one, and then for the other one, I'm going to use a model in place. The first thing I want you to know is that I've deleted all of your model except for the roof and and some bits and pieces and the import just to make my life easier. And if I go to the top of roof, I've also added a reference plane on the top and the bottom of the roof. I'm not really going to use this one, but I will use this one. I don't know if they're exactly correct or not, but I just wanted to show you what I was going to be using to draw on. And so if I go back to my 3D view, and I'm going to go into my south elevation, and if we take a look at the south elevation and the profile of this guy, if you go to the structure and the beam, right now it's actually set. I set it on that reference plane south. Oftentimes it'll ask you to pick a reference plane or from the pull down, or actually pick a plane, and so this is the reference plane that I'm going to be using. So it's going to give us a C-plane, if you're familiar with Rhino, that we can work in this view. So I'm going to hit cancel there and leave it set to that roof south. If I go to structure and I go to beam, if I go to pick line, it'll actually let me pick the bottom of the roof, right? But then it can't create it there, which I don't know why. It's a little weird. But if I keep going to the pick line, it'll actually pick that guy, and it'll pick that guy, and then it'll pick that guy, and it looks really crazy. Part of the reason is that that is not a tangent transition between the edges of the arcs that are creating that rise in the roof. So I'll show you how you can create it, and maybe make a suggestion on how to make it better. So if you go to structure and beam, and instead of picking the roof, you draw it in, the beam, you draw it in. So I'm just going to left click here and left click here, and then I'm going to go to an arc because it's the chain is on, right? So I can actually just switch to an arc in the middle, and I'll come up here and make sure it's picking that, and pick some point there, right? It'll actually draw those two in. Now if I come over here and pick this point, it's going to want to make a tangent arc, which means that this face and the face of this second arc will meet exactly. So if I do listen to Revit and pick the tangent, you get a nice clean transition there, and you could go ahead and finish it off. Now this is kind of up to you whether you want to lower that roof and make it, I'll go back to line here to finish this off, and make it a tangent condition. I would suggest doing that if that little bit doesn't bother you. So if I undo this whole thing, so I'll just undo it, and go back to here, if I go ahead and go to architecture, or sorry, go to structure and beam, I can go in and do an arc, and from here to here, and pick the bottom of that roof. You kind of have to zoom out to get it. I don't know why. And it's not going to give me the tangency this time because I didn't start, like I'm not chaining to that other arc, so it doesn't know it exists. But if I zoom out and just pick the bottom of that roof, right, what you're going to get is that condition, right, because it's not meeting exactly. So I might, try to make it meet, right? But it's up to you. So if I just continue, I'm just going to finish this off with this little, there's not any really good way to fix that gap with this guy. So I'll show you a way that if you want to use this exact roof that you can. But I'll just go ahead and kind of finish this off using the tangent version. So I'll go in again and go to beam, and I'll go to arc, and I'll start from here and go to here and pick on that guy, and then come over here. Sometimes it's real funny about the snapping. You kind of have to zoom out to get it, and then pick the tangent and just finish it off over here, right? And whenever you get the beam that you want, you can come into like your east elevation, so you're looking at it on end, right? And I'll go to medium over here so I can see my structural framing, and there it is, right? And so what I can do is, for some reason when you window around it doesn't let you pick that top piece, so I'm just going to do a crossing box here and filter out everything, except for the structural framing. And then I can come in and move that guy, and I want to disjoint it and remove the constraints. And I just want to move it right from the center of this to the center of that, and making sure that I'm snapping to where I want to be snapping to. And then you can array it. So then I'm just going to array, making sure that I have second here, and doesn't really matter the number, I'll put in 20. And I'll array from here to here is the second one. Right, and it'll sit there and think for a minute. Now you can see it's arraying out 20 of those, right? So if I go to my 3D view, I now have an array of 20 beams. Okay, so this is one way to do it. If I go back to my south elevation, I'll show you one other thing. It does do it right in sort of groups. So I'm going to hide the import, and you'll get a line at each one of these intersections, right? And that's kind of just the way that Revit's going to do it, because it's creating individual little beams. If you want to, you can actually go in and hide those lines in elevation. Let's say this was one of your elevations. You could just go to modify and pick the line work command and set it to invisible lines. And if you come in and pick these guys, right, you can hide them. Now if you're in a 3D view, that might, and you've got 40 of them, that's kind of a pain. So in the next video I'll show you how to create it as one big piece, and you can use the exact roof if you want to.